Listen carefully. Most men don't ruin their lives because of mistakes. They ruin their lives because of their mouth. A man's words can quietly destroy his reputation long before his actions ever do. Not because he's incapable, but because he speaks from fear, from ego, from insecurity. Men who talk too much, men who defend themselves too quickly, men who get loud to look strong, they lose power every time they open their mouth. But Stoic men, they understand something deeper. Silence can be strategy. Speech can be a weapon. And every word a man chooses reveals exactly who he is. So in this video, I'm going to expose 7 phrases weak men use without even realizing it. And then I'll give you the Stoic replacements that instantly make you sound stronger, calmer, and more respected. If you apply these, people won't just hear the difference, they'll feel it. Point 1. I already know that. There's a sentence almost every weak man uses. A sentence that sounds confident on the outside but exposes insecurity on the inside. I already know that. Most men say it without thinking. But it's one of the fastest ways to destroy your growth, your discipline, and your potential. Because behind those 4 words hides a much bigger problem. It's arrogance disguised as intelligence. See, anyone can hear information. Anyone can repeat quotes. Anyone can pretend to understand a lesson. But very few men actually live it. The truth is simple. A man who says, I already know that, is usually the man who isn't doing it. He confuses knowing with becoming. He confuses information with wisdom. And most importantly, he's afraid of becoming a student again. Because being a student requires humility. It requires admitting, I'm not perfect. It requires saying, I still have work to do. Weak men hate that feeling. Strong men embrace it. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. To them, wisdom wasn't about collecting ideas. It was about living them daily. Epictetus said something powerful. You cannot learn what you think you already know. Read that again. If your mind is already full, nothing new can enter. If you're already convinced you understand everything, you'll never see your blind spots. You'll never improve your habits. You'll never grow beyond your current level. The Stoic question was always this: do I live this wisdom, or do I only repeat it? This is the line that separates the average man from the disciplined man, the reactive man from the focused man, the weak man from the Stoic. A lot of men hear advice like, wake up early, control your emotions, stay consistent, stop wasting time. And their mind instantly says, I already know. But if you look at their life, they're still waking up late. They're still losing control. They're still inconsistent. They're still wasting time. Knowledge without action is dead. Knowledge without habit is useless. Knowledge without humility becomes ego. So how does transformation start? Simple. Replace pride with curiosity. Instead of saying, I already know that, try saying, what can I learn from this again? What part of this am I still not living? How can I apply this better today? Because repetition is not weakness. Repetition is mastery. The strongest men in history became strong because they practiced the basics thousands of times without getting bored. The moment you stop learning, you start declining. The moment you think you know everything, you blind yourself. And the moment you refuse to be a student, you lose the chance to become great. Remember this: a wise man learns repeatedly. A weak man claims he already knows. One becomes disciplined, the other stays stuck. Which one will you be? Point 2. It's not my fault. There's a phrase that weak men repeat over and over, thinking it excuses their failures, hides their weakness, or makes them feel justified. It's not my fault. Every time a man says these words, he surrenders a piece of his power. He blames the world, his past, his parents, his boss, his luck, anything and anyone but himself. He wraps himself in excuses, hoping they will shield him from responsibility. But what he doesn't realize is that excuses are chains. The more he points outward, the smaller and weaker he becomes. By refusing to take ownership, he gives up the one thing that can't be taken from him: his mind, his decisions, and his actions. The Stoics saw this centuries ago. To them, responsibility is freedom. Not in a philosophical sense, in a survival sense. Epictetus reminded us, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. That's the difference between a weak man and a stoic man. The weak man complains, waits for fairness, and curses the circumstances. The stoic observes, adjusts, and acts. He doesn't waste energy blaming the storm. He learns to sail in it. He doesn't waste time lamenting the rain. He builds a shelter. He understands that while the world owes him nothing, he owes himself everything. Transformation begins when you shift from blame to ownership. When something goes wrong, ask yourself, what can I control here? What action can I take? What lesson can I learn? That single mindset change turns weakness into strength. It stops giving your power away and starts building your resilience. The man who owns his choices becomes unstoppable. He's no longer waiting for fairness. He's creating it within himself through discipline, courage, and consistent action. Every time you replace "it's not my fault" with "I take responsibility," you forge a piece of armor around your mind and soul. The world doesn't respect excuses. It respects men who act. So stop pointing fingers. Stop whining. Start taking control. Stop being a victim of circumstances and become the master of your life. Because responsibility is not a burden. It is the ultimate power a man can wield. Point 3. I don't care what anyone thinks. There's a sentence that many men wear like armor, thinking it makes them invincible. I don't care what anyone thinks. On the surface, it sounds bold, fearless, even liberating. It sounds like defiance. It sounds like freedom. But listen closely. It's rarely spoken by a truly free man. Most of the time, it's a confession disguised as strength. A man who says this loudly is often a man who secretly cares more than anyone realizes. The louder he claims indifference, the deeper his fear lies beneath the surface. What he's really doing is trying to convince himself and the world that he is untouchable. This false indifference is dangerous because it blocks growth. When you reject all opinions outright, you cut yourself off from learning, from reflection, and from improvement. You stop listening, you stop observing, and you stop evolving. You convince yourself that caring about what others think is weakness, when in reality, the wisdom lies in caring selectively. The Stoics taught this centuries ago. Marcus Aurelius never said, "Ignore the world." What he said was, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." The Stoic doesn't silence every voice, but he filters the ones he allows to enter his mind. He knows which feedback is valuable and which is noise. He doesn't worship approval. He doesn't chase applause. He doesn't beg for recognition. He simply acts with integrity, knowing that the results will speak for themselves. The problem with the weak man is that he thinks freedom is rebellion. He thinks ignoring everyone is power. But true power doesn't need to be shouted. True power is quiet. It moves silently. It acts without validation. The man who needs to prove that he doesn't care about opinions has already given those opinions power over him. By needing to announce his indifference, he admits that he's attached to perception. The Stoic knows this. He understands that freedom is self-control, not defiance. Real strength is calm, measured, and grounded in principle. It doesn't need slogans, hashtags, or loud proclamations. So how do we transform this weakness into mastery? Begin by shifting the focus inward. Stop seeking approval from the world and start seeking integrity within yourself. Care about your principles. Care about your actions. Care about your word. Care about becoming someone you would respect, even if no one else notices. Because when your values guide your decisions, external validation becomes relevant. When your life aligns with your principles, your presence commands respect without effort. Actions always speak louder than words, and quiet, disciplined action will always outweigh loud declarations. It's also about selective care. Not every opinion deserves a reaction. Not every insult requires defense. Not every criticism is relevant. The Stoic filters. He asks, "Is this within my control?" If it isn't, he lets it go. If it is, he acts wisely. By doing this, he preserves his energy, sharpens his focus, and strengthens his inner peace. Meanwhile, the man who constantly insists, "I don't care what anyone thinks," wastes his energy trying to appear unshakable while secretly reacting to every judgment. In the end, caring selectively, living with integrity, and letting your actions define you is far more powerful than pretending not to care. Stop shouting it. Stop convincing yourself. Stop performing. Build yourself silently. Act with purpose. Train your mind to filter, your heart to prioritize, and your life to align with truth. Because the moment your words, thoughts, and actions converge, you no longer need to say, "I don't care what anyone thinks." The world will already know. And that is true strength.